Mayim Bialik, a second Emmy nomination now for your role as Amy on The Big Bang Theory. How did you find out about this nomination this summer?
My publicist, Heather Weiss, called me. It was very early in the morning on the West Coast. I was actually with my boys at their grandma's house in San Jose. We were on vacation. And I thought that for sure I didn't get nominated and that Heather was calling to console me. But I was wrong. She indeed was telling me that I was nominated, and I was really, really shocked. I was more shocked this year even than last year. And I write for a website called Kveller, and as I wrote for Kveller, as Heather was telling me, I stepped on what I later found out was a dead baby bird that the cat had dragged in. So my finding out about my Emmy moment was actually kind of comedic and sort of bizarre.
Kind of grounded you from the experience, right?
Exactly.
Well, there's so many funny ladies in supporting roles this year. They had to overstuff this category with 7 of you this time. What's your kind of take right now on comedy on TV? It just seems like because of cable, because of the premium channels like yours on CBS, there's just so many comedies on.
Well, I think that's really the thing. There's so many more choices, really, I guess, than there ever have been, and especially than there were in sort of my previous incarnation on television, which was in the 90s. I like to point out, like, there's amazing women in my category. Like, of course I'm not going to win. Look at these women. It's incredible. But I think, for us, it's not just Jim's nomination and mine, but that our show was nominated as a sitcom is very unusual. And, comedy is great in any form, but I will say there's something really special about the sitcom format, and the fact that we really use an audience to really determine what our script is like week to week. There are many changes that happen because the studio audience reacts or doesn't react a certain way. So it's a different kind of comedy to really use the audience kind of as the other person in the room.
Well, we had Jim on earlier this week. You share a lot of scenes with him, obviously, and he was just praising you left and right, just talking about how great you are to work with, and well, how perfect you are in this particular role. I think he was highly excited that you joined the cast a couple of years ago.
Well, I'm super thrilled. I mean, I had never seen the show. But to work alongside an award-winning actor and someone as gracious and talented and funny and interesting as Jim is really absolutely one of the highlights of this job. And people see our 22 minutes a week and they love us and it's fun and it makes people laugh and that's great. But there's a whole world here that goes on for 5 days that produces those 22 minutes. So a lot of that is those relationships, and we're all good enough actors that if we didn't like each other, you couldn't tell. But I definitely think Jim and I have a lot of ability to sort of be maybe extra creative with our characters, and some of the choices that our characters get to make, I think, also comes from the fact that we are so close, off camera as well.
One thing he talked about, your particular episode that you submitted, the fish guts displacement. He said over these 6 years, he doesn't often have a trouble, not laughing, by the time you've rehearsed and so forth. But he said on this particular one, some of the scenes that actually made the final cut were the only ones where he wasn't laughing.
Yeah, we had a little difficulty on that episode. The spanking in particular, which originally was not scripted to be on camera, it was supposed to be just audio. That was very challenging for Jim and me. But yeah, even some of the other stuff, a lot of that's I call it the sick episode. There's a lot of come hither looks that I was giving him, and yeah, it's really funny. But it's great, that we have such an easy relationship, and we're able to kind of get through that stuff for sure.
What kind of audience response on this particular episode, or any episode where characters start to break, or the audience can I'm sure get a sense that, hey, this is unique, this is a really fun moment that only they get to experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is something Jim and I talk about. Actors react differently to being up on their lines, or messing up lines, or laughing. It's something I really try not to do. So for me, it's actually, I don't think it's as funny as the audience thinks it is, if I break or if I'm up on my lines. But I think, again, that's part of the sort of unique experience. and that pressure, of having a live audience. And in that way, we are like theater, where we have our audience feet from us. They're several feet from us, and everything they do affects us. And if someone, is having a coughing fit, for example, we can hear that, and we usually hold for that and things like that. So it's a real interaction between the audience, and just like we learn about us from them, they also learn, a lot about our show from what they get to observe.
What is the difference? You said you talked about your past sitcom, which was Blossom in the early '90s. What is the difference now for you as an actress as opposed to then?
Oh gosh, the craft hasn't changed. I'm happy to say, especially because that was sitcom and this is sitcom. I mean, the cameras are a little smaller. We now have focus pullers on cameras instead of one camera person operation. So there's things like that. Our director didn't used to be on the floor in the '90s. Directors were secluded in booths, and they would give you your notes in front of a live audience over a loudspeaker so that everyone heard everything that went on. So there's certain things that have changed. The craft has not changed at all. The universe of publicity has changed. There's now an internet. There's a strong interest in women in particular looking very, very perfect. And that's not necessarily related to the show, but a lot of what we do is also publicity and press. And Spanx didn't exist in the '90s because no one expected your body to look like a model's. So things like that have absolutely changed.
I went to a taping of Friends a few years ago. It was right toward the end of their run, so the actors were in a leverage position where they only came in 3 days a week. But they warned us beforehand, because of that, they actually rehearse and block the same night they're recording. So it was like a 10-hour shoot. What's a Big Bang Theory shoot like?
Not like that. No, we work a 5-day week. We rehearse for 4 days. On the 4th day, our camera crew comes in and we block, and we pre-tape scenes that involve green screens or special effects or unusual hair or makeup changes that would take away from the time of the actual taping. Our tapings are about 4 hours. 4 or 5, really depends. And it's fun. We do multiple takes. Rewrites are done. I can't imagine sitting in one place for 4.5 hours, but the audience members do it, and we have an amazing warm-up comedian, and he keeps them happy and laughing, and they get a piece of pizza and a bottle of water halfway through, and it seems to work well.
Back to your episode for a moment, the one that you've submitted for the Emmy, the judges that are looking at those right now. Just tell me about getting that particular script. I mean, not every week you get a script, you go over it, you get ready for it, but I'm sure there's certain weeks where you're featured more that you're just tickled when you get those kinds of scripts. Honestly, any script where I have scenes with Jim like that is, I know, going to be a great week and a challenging one, just because we're managing a lot of expectations about our characters always, and whenever we have sort of relationship episodes, that's always something that we have to deal with, and that episode was no exception. A lot about that episode we went back and forth kind of all week. With how intentional we wanted Amy to be, how much did Sheldon understand about what was going on, how remorseful should Amy be while this was happening. There's a lot of back and forth, and there was reactions that were not originally scripted of mine that were kind of added as moments, with the Vicks Vapor Rub and stuff. So there was a lot of work on that episode, and then ultimately once you get in front of the audience, kind of doesn't matter what you've prepared for. They really do determine a lot about your comedic timing and how you play it. Absolutely. Later in the season, I think it was the next to last episode called The Love Spell Potential. That's right after the Dungeons and Dragons game. So you have some other funny moments with him, but they are off screen. We just get to hear what's being said. That was another funny one for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I kind of consider that Jim and my season finale. It was the penultimate episode, so there was one more after it. But, for us, that was sort of the culmination of a lot of emotional buildup. And, Jim and I don't mean to speak for him, but I don't think we could have been happier, with how they decided to have Amy and Sheldon kind of consummate that aspect of their relationship. I think it really satisfies people's initial understanding and comprehension of their relationship. This is a very unusual couple, and Amy's been kind of very sexually aggressive, but when it came down to it, she was very kind of floored and nervous, with the actual intimacy being present like that. And it was a really, really sweet episode for both of us. Very, very sweet episode. It was also directed by Anthony Rich, who's normally our first AD, but who directed that episode, so it was really special. I've known Anthony since I was about 12 years old, and so it was really special to have someone who's normally our AD really kind of getting his hands in there with such an emotional episode.
This show could go on for many years to come, but in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking about, and I'm sure Jim does too, what is the end game, do you think, for Sheldon and Amy? Where do you think this thing is going to head down the road?
I don't mean to say this as a platitude. I don't have that in my head. I feel like I really take this season, I take this job like you would take life if you were in this kind of relationship. You don't get to plan, I mean, sure, there's things that might happen, and we all know what those things might be, but I don't really spend a lot of time on it. I really live week to week, and to me that's the way our characters live, and that's the way we live as humans, right? You live kind of episode to episode of your life. So I don't know. All I wanted this season was to be able to have a scene alone with Simon Helberg, and apparently that's happening. But other than that, I have no plans for this season.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Over the years that you've been on, have we met any of your family members? Any of her family members?
Yes. There's a really funny episode where Amy needs to convince her mother that she's dating, so she has Sheldon pretend to be her boyfriend, and they Skype with her mother. And I believe the line was, sorry, there's a naughty word, and he says to her, he explicitly says to my mother, "I'm about to have vigorous sex with your daughter," and that's the end of the Skype call. So yes, we have met Amy's mother.
Okay, I couldn't remember that. I so relate in terms of, I'm a big TV history fan. So when Amy first came on, the first person I thought of in terms of TV history, a similar kind of a character was Lilith on Cheers. I just thought that was a really, maybe she's an aunt of yours or something.
No, I have heard that. Actually, my character obviously is supposed to be a mimicry, as much as possible of Jim Parsons, and that's what I was asked for at the audition. I was told they're looking for a female Jim Parsons, and I mean, I've been a mimicky kind of comedian since I was a kid. But I actually played a character that I based on the church lady, Dana Carvey's character from SNL. I played this character called Frida on Webster, if anybody's old enough to remember Webster. I did 8 episodes as this very uptight kind of church lady character. And obviously there's some Lilith in there too, and then it's really funny all these years later to be kind of playing a similar kind of character.
Coming off this 6th season, which is late in a lot of series runs, but obviously this show's got a lot more steam left, it's winning all kinds of awards. The show won the TCA Critics Award for Best Comedy this summer, the Broadcast TV Critics. Obviously you're up at the Emmys for Best Comedy Series. Why at this stage? What is it about this last season do you feel like has gotten so much critical acclaim?
I don't know. Steve Milaro is now our showrunner and executive producer, and he's brought a really, really different and new kind of intimate flavor for all of the relationships. So absolutely, Steve. We've had some additions to our writing staff that I just think have made it so much, again, kind of more complicated emotionally, and I think that's what people are really kind of responding to. I think Johnny Galecki said last night, this is not about guys in science anymore. It's really become about human relationships. Also, you have to try hard not to see our show because it's on and it's syndicated now, and so I think it's also getting farther than it did before. And even some of the sort of critical elite, like the New York Times did a piece on us saying that a lot of people have been kind of resisting getting on the Big Bang bandwagon, but there's actually a lot of, there's a lot of nice stuff in our show, in our, sweet little sitcom. Obviously Melissa Rauch's character, Bernadette, and Amy, we've been adding sort of dimensions to the other characters and abilities for more plot lines and more relationships. But I never would, credit myself, but I think Steve, absolutely, and then sort of us getting farther out there.
I think as the show has progressed along the years and adding your character in and Melissa's character in, I think it's been able to get deeper with the characters. We see more sides of each of the characters, and none less so than in that episode where all of you are reading the fake letters to Howard because the other one was destroyed.
Yep. Also directed by Anthony Rich. It's funny you mentioned that episode. It's hard in our format, and I think maybe that's also what people are picking up on. We may be a sitcom, but we are tackling stuff that sometimes we don't see explored in 22 minutes. Again, I credit our writers. It's absolutely their skill in encapsulating those emotions and those relationships so well.
Now, being in the business for as long as you have, I'm sure that getting those 2 SAG Ensemble nominations last year and this year meant a lot to you.
Yeah, I mean, to be part of this cast is so incredible, and then for us to be acknowledged together, even with a nomination, is really special. People's Choice, it's incredible to be on such a broad cast. We call it's a deep cast. There's a lot of depth to all of us, and there's so many different permutations, of personalities and things. And as I said, the only thing left was me and Simon having a scene together. So.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I know you're getting ready for shooting the first episode of the new season, and good luck at the Emmys in a few weeks.
Thank you so much.